Hello, and welcome to our presentation on balancing your blood sugars. We'll discuss practical approaches for managing your blood sugar levels today. My name is Natalie Novak. I use she, her pronouns. I am the registered dietitian over at the Health Center at Auraria. And this presentation was put together in help with Shelby Elliott, MSU graduate student from the nutrition department. The objectives of the presentation are going to be to understand what is blood sugar and how does insulin play a role in that. How do we manage our blood sugar levels in their optimal ranges via nutrition? We'll talk not only about types of carbohydrates, types of macronutrients, but also meal timing. And then we'll discuss the impact of exercise and stress, and you're welcome to reach out with any questions that you might have or book an appointment with myself. So before we get started, I want you to pause the presentation and just think about the last meal that you ate. Whether it was lunch, what food groups were included in your lunch, did you skip breakfast and maybe it was dinner last night, what food groups were included in your meal, and perhaps when the last time you ate would be a good point of data before we carry on with the presentation. So feel free to pause and take as much time as you need. We'll get started with understanding what is blood sugar. Oftentimes it can be referred to as blood glucose. Simply put, blood sugar or blood glucose is the energy that is broken down from food, primarily carbohydrates, that gets released into our vascular system and allows us to have the fuel or the energy that we need for all of the organ systems in our bodies. So we often take for granted everything that goes on with our liver filtering waste, helping with digestion, our kidneys keeping us hydrated, our brains that are thinking, our lungs and our hearts that are pumping and keeping us alive. All of these organ systems need glucose, also known as blood sugar, from the foods that we consume. Now, a normal blood sugar level is what we want to maintain, and in this diagram, looking at the vascular systems, we can see that glucose is present in a blood vessel along with things like red blood cells and other components that exist in the vascular system. But when our blood sugar level gets high, perhaps after we've eaten a meal or sometimes in response to stress, that blood glucose is existing in our vascular system, and this is when insulin gets released. It is a hormone that gets released from the pancreas and helps open up the door to the cells in our body. So perhaps you're at the top of the day at work and you need your brain to be concentrating. You're feeling like you haven't had anything to eat. Some of those symptoms of low blood sugar can be irritability or difficulty concentrating. But if you have a breakfast meal, your blood sugar levels get high and now insulin is released to open the door to your brain cells or perhaps muscle cells if you're going for a workout, to be able to take in this blood glucose. So blood sugar gets released post-meal, and now we need to get that energy out of the vascular system and into the heart, the brain, the lungs. That's where insulin plays a role. It allows us to open the door to the cells, and that blood glucose comes down, allowing us to feel more nourished, allowing us to feel more energized throughout the day. Now, persistently high blood sugar levels, so if you're feeling like increased thirst, more frequent urination, perhaps fatigue, as well as maybe some cloudy thoughts, those can all be signs of high blood sugar levels. And if those persist over time and insulin drops, right, perhaps we have insulin resistance, that can put us at risk for things like type 2 diabetes, if type 2 or pre-diabetes. And if those conditions are unchecked and we have persistently high blood glucose levels, then that can put us at risk for different issues involving things like the kidneys, vision. Uncontrolled diabetes has a whole set of consequences on its own. Low blood sugar symptoms, on the other side, are also really common, and a lot of what I see in my dietetic sessions is feelings of decreased concentration, perhaps irritability, difficulty regulating sleep and circadian rhythms, and poor mood, maybe increased anxiety. So those can be symptoms. Fatigue, difficulty concentrating, even sometimes feeling a little shaky or clammy can be signs of low blood sugar levels. And nutrition really becomes key when we begin to think about how do we maintain blood sugar levels so that they're not too low or too high. So I touched a little bit on diabetes, and this is going to be a really quick 101 slide on that. So some risk factors can be genetics. If you have a grandfather or a father or mother, an aunt with type 2 diabetes or prediabetes, it can be a genetic predisposing factor for you to develop prediabetes. Prediabetes is often, when caught early, it can be something that we can prevent from turning into type 2 diabetes through lifestyle or medication interventions. However, if not caught, prediabetes can turn into type 2 diabetes, and we know that by looking at two different labs. So fasting blood glucose would be the amount of blood sugar in your bloodstream at this current time. So if we had you do a lab, had somebody take your blood and examine it for your fasting blood glucose, we would know that if it was normal, it would be under 100. If it was above 100, that could indicate prediabetes, and if it's over 126, that can indicate type 2 diabetes. And this lab is ideally taken in the morning before you eat anything. So fasting, meaning you haven't had anything to eat, we want to know where your blood sugar levels are at. And the A1C is more of a long-term data point where we can see for the last 3 months what your blood sugar levels have been doing. So not just right now, perhaps you had a lot of stress that might have been increasing your blood sugar levels, but over the past 3 months, how is your diet, your lifestyle, your exercise, your stress levels impacting your blood sugar? And if that number is less than 5.7, you're good. If it's between 5.7 and 6.4, that might warrant a little bit more caution. And if it was above 6.5, that would put us in the realm of type 2 diabetes. So these are labs that are often recommended to assess. If you've never done them before, they're a great baseline lab to see where you are. And if perhaps you are in that pre-diabetic range, getting this lab drawn every 3 to 6 months is oftentimes recommended. So why is blood sugar balance important? Well, in addition to maintaining blood sugar levels and preventing things like type 2 diabetes, it can also impact those of us who don't stress too much about this chronic condition. So even as a student or an employee, being able to balance your blood sugar levels can help to stabilize your mood. It can keep you feeling focused in class. It can keep your concentration at work prolonged and help you feel overall better, right? Another thing that balancing your blood sugar levels can do is regulate the nervous system. So this term of feeling hangry or irritable, maybe you snapped on a coworker or a loved one, a friend, and then you said, you know, I'm sorry, I was just hungry. That speaks to really low blood sugar levels, right? So regulating our blood sugar levels can keep our nervous system happy, therefore improving our mood. And also regulating the gastrointestinal tract, right? When we are able to have consistency in eating breakfast, taking a break to digest, having lunch, taking a break to digest, having a snack, dinner, so on and so forth, this allows consistent blood flow to the gastrointestinal tract, which keeps that system healthfully working. Now, depending on what types of foods you eat, and we'll talk about that in the next kind of slides, this also increases your opportunity for nutrient diversity, right? The more eating times we have, the more protein, fiber, complex carbohydrates, vitamins, and minerals we are able to get in a day. So, carbohydrates are the main macronutrient that we think of when we think about either stabilizing or spiking our blood sugar levels. Oftentimes I'll ask them what foods come to mind when you think of carbs, and they'll say bread, sweets, pasta, and those are correct. We also have vegetables, starchy and non-starchy, as well as fruits, fruit juices, whole fruits, even lactose, so dairy sources such as milk or yogurt can be simple carbohydrates, and whole grains as well. So by choosing a wider variety of both simple carbohydrates and complex carbohydrates, that comes back to the point of increasing nutrient diversity, right? Getting fiber from carrots with your sandwich, getting vitamin C from the orange that you have in the morning or as a snack, and then lots of great heart healthy fats and micronutrients from whole grain starches, right? So this allows us not only to get more micronutrient diversity, but regulate our blood sugar levels so that they're not constantly spiking, and that they're regulating things like insulin, slowing down. And so let's talk a little bit more in depth about this idea of simple versus complex carbohydrates. So I oftentimes use this example of Legos in sessions. If your task is to break down a Lego component and that Lego that I've given you is either a car or a person, it's rather quick to just take off the head, the trunk, and the legs. You're done, right? We have those individual units. Same thing for simple carbohydrates. When we're consuming things like honey, table sugar, fruit, or fruit juices, the bonds that exist in food chemistry are simple. There might be 1 or 2 units together that's making up that food, and our body just has to break down 1 or 2 units at a time, which allows us to get this quicker response of energy and an increased spike of our blood sugars, right? So consuming something like fruits, fruit juices in your smoothies, 100% orange juice or pomegranate juice, table sugar in coffee, or honey in tea in moderate amounts, those are going to be natural sources of simple sugars. These foods are from the earth. They also provide us with vitamins and phytochemicals. Those are going to be causing a higher spike in our blood sugar levels. It's easier to break down. That means we get that energy quickly. Now, more of our added sugars, so things like soda, high fructose corn syrup, energy drinks, maybe sweetened lattes or baked goods, those are also going to be simple carbohydrates that also spike our blood sugar levels. However, those don't have a lot of nutrient density to them, so no fiber is going to be added, not a whole lot of natural forming micronutrients like vitamins and minerals. Everything fits in moderation, but this is why we want to be mindful of having all foods, including those complex carbohydrates. So now if I've given you a Lego community and the task was to take the school and break down each one by one the Lego school so that you just have those building blocks, it's going to take you a lot longer, and that's where our complex carbohydrates, so a whole wheat kernel that's turned into breads, 100% whole grain bread, or let's say oatmeal, brown rice, corn, greens, sweet potatoes, beans, and lentils. These all have much, much more complex molecular structures, up to 100 different units that your body and the enzymes in your body have to break down. And so it's going to take longer for that breakdown to occur, but as you're breaking that down, you're getting this slow and steady release of glucose into the bloodstream. And that means that you can balance your blood sugar levels a little bit longer, right? You have more time with your meal, you have more time of feeling full, you have more mental real estate to focus on school or work tasks before feeling hungry again. Whereas if you just ate a banana for breakfast, you would likely have to refuel, or you would have to deal with hunger yet again rather quickly. So simple carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates, they both have an impact on blood sugar levels. The simples are going to spike your blood sugar levels. The complex are going to have a slower, steadier release. And this is a diagram showing us a little bit more of what that looks like. So this is time, right? So let's say you eat a meal at 8 a.m. and then let's say that food, not a meal, I'm sorry, that food is going to be a fruit, so a banana, right? Your body is going to quickly break down those 1 or 2 individual units, and we have a spike in our blood sugars around 30 minutes. As easy as it is for us to digest those, it's also that easy for insulin to absorb that blood sugar, and about 60 minutes later, you're back to zero, feeling hungry again. Now, simple carbohydrates, let's say you're somebody who likes to work out in the morning, or perhaps you take a workout during your lunch break, and you want to have a quick snack to fuel your workout, to optimize it. Something like a fruit or a smoothie or an English, let's say, muffin is going to be a really great choice because you have less time to digest something, and now you're at the peak of this energy that you can then utilize for your workout, right? Then we have our refined carbohydrates. They are stripped away from their whole grain components. So our whole grains are going to have an earthier taste. They have healthy fats such as vitamin E in there, located in the germ, and they also have fiber, which takes a longer time to break down. But we've refined this natural whole grain into something like white bread, white rice, or white pasta because it tastes sweeter, right? And so that is somewhere in the middle where we have that spike, not quite as drastic as something like a latte, let's say, for a sweetened latte, for example, and then that blood sugar level comes down rather quickly too. Whereas you want to start your day with a complex carbohydrate, let's say you do something like whole wheat toast with avocado, eggs, and some fruit. Now your blood sugar, now your body has to break down more of these nutrients and more complex nutrients. So you have the slow and steady release of blood sugar that's energizing you. Around 2 hours, you're at your peak, and then slowly but surely that is going to be absorbed into your cells. And so you have generally about 3 to 4 hours with more of this complex carbohydrate or a balanced meal before you have to have a snack or eat a meal again. So complex carbohydrates I often recommend for longer lasting meals, your standard breakfast, lunch, and dinner, whereas something like a simple carbohydrate can be really great pre-workout, or perhaps as a snack that you just want to hold your hunger over maybe about 1 hour or something like that. So when it comes to our complex carbohydrates, and we talked a little bit about whole versus refined grains, we're also speaking about fiber. And fiber is really, really important in a number of different ways. I want you to think about foods that you put in water. So if you take what we call a soluble fiber, something like oats, and overnight oats are really popular. If you take beans, dried beans, and you soak them overnight, lentils that you put in soups, chia seeds, peas, things like this, they absorb water, right? They expand with absorbing this water. Because of the solubility, this can help to lower cholesterol, which is another bonus, but it can also take longer because of this absorption that's happening, and so it slows down our blood sugar and allows more of that maintenance and that balance to occur. Whereas insoluble fibers, so this is something like if you took carrots or celery or kale and you put it in water, nuts, for example, there would not be a whole lot of disintegration that's happening in this experience. You still have your carrots, your celery intact, right, in its cellular structure. This, on the contrary, helps to push food throughout, so it helps preventing things like constipation. It also feeds the bacteria in our gut microbiome, which allows for a whole nother set of benefits around the immune system and mental health that we'll talk about in a future Lunch and Learn. And both of these foods are really, really beneficial. We aim for people to get about 25 to 35 grams of fiber. Most Americans do not do that, and I think a big reason is because of convenience. You don't see a whole lot of vending machines or workplace lunch break rooms that have chopped fruit or fruits or chopped vegetables and white bean dips or hummus dips as snacks. It tends to often be, donuts in the break room, or maybe catered meals or something like that that is not super fiber rich. But I want you to look at this little diagram here where we can see the whole grain. It has the bran, that is the fibrous part of the kernel. Inside is the endosperm. This is mostly that starchy carbohydrate that's going to increase your blood sugar. Little bit of protein exists here. And then the germ, this is a fatty core. In here exists heart healthy fats, vitamins like vitamin E, and breaking down this whole component is going to take a lot longer than the refined grain, right? So this fiber and this germ, removing it does two things. It makes the refined grain sweeter. We get rid of that earthier taste and we have more of a sweeter bread that we're consuming. And then when we remove this germ, it also, because that fat is now gone, it preserves shelf life. So we can kind of keep white rice and keep our white breads and things like that lasting longer on the shelf because we've removed the rancidity of fat, which tends to go bad quicker. And so by removing that fiber and by removing that germ, that's where we get that spike of your blood sugar, because it's a lot easier for the body to digest something after these nutrients have been removed. Now, other foods, other macronutrients that you can, let's say, pair with a simple carbohydrate or a refined grain. I do want to say, as we come back to this slide on fiber and whole grains, the general recommendation is to choose at least 50% of your grains to be whole grains. So whether it's whole grain bread or brown rice or wheat pasta or some crackers. You'll kind of debate with yourself, you know, what you prefer in terms of refined versus whole grain, but trying to at least get 50% of those grains, whether it's oats or 100% whole wheat bread. If it's brown rice or wild rice, trying to get those at least 50%. And then with your refined grains, you can do things like add these other macronutrients to help slow down your blood sugar levels. So I realize that for a lot of cultures, it's important to have let's say white rice or white pasta, right? And if you're concerned about that having an impact on your blood sugar levels, we know that carbohydrates increase our blood sugar levels the most. Proteins the second, and fats the least, right? So if you did something like white rice and then you added salmon or fresh tuna and then some kind of sauce and avocados, and on top of that fiber, let's say it's a poke bowl and there's seaweed salad and mango and pineapple and carrots. Now you have this spike from the white rice is going to be mitigated by a slower release of protein and fat and fiber to overall have this macronutrient from carbohydrates have that slower, steadier release that mimics the complex carb. So again, we want 50-50, half of our grains to be whole grains, not just because of blood sugar balance, but also because of fiber. That's great for our digestion. That's good for our gut microbiome. That gives us different micronutrients and heart healthy fats. We want that to slow down our blood sugar levels, but those grains that we don't really compromise, maybe it's white rice or white pasta, you can do something like add a lean protein, chicken, fish, a heart healthy fat such as avocados or oils, and then adding some kind of broccoli or peas or greens, squash to your dishes to help balance out your blood sugar levels. So even same thing if you decided to have, let's say, banana bread and a latte for breakfast in the morning, if you did something like added a couple of hard-boiled eggs or a Greek yogurt cup or a protein drink to your banana bread, that can help mitigate the spike from just consuming the banana bread alone. So celebrating foods, emotional eating, it's important to have joy and not to be too restrictive in our dietary intake. I certainly enjoy ice cream. I certainly enjoy baking and baked goods, but we want to make sure that the majority of our diet is going to be from those whole grain carbohydrates, fruits, vegetables, things that are of the earth, and then being a little bit more mindful about pastries, sugary snacks, or refined grains. If you're having a soda, that's likely meeting about 70% of added sugar in one day. So maybe it's not a soda and cake at the same time or on the same day, but it's being mindful that I want to celebrate this. I want to have, cake for a celebratory birthday or holiday, but being mindful that those other meals are going to have complex carbohydrates, lean proteins, fiber from your vegetables. So being mindful that the majority of our diet is not taken up by foods that are really, really convenient and easy to get. There's energy drinks and sodas and vending machines located all over people's workplaces and campuses. It's really easy to grab fast food. It's oftentimes more shelf stable and accessible to get processed foods. It totally fits within a diet, but being able to be more mindful of what this is doing to not only our blood sugar levels, but health in general outside of that. So this is where we'll talk a little bit more about meal timing. This is an ideal slide where we can see somebody has woken up in the morning, they eat breakfast that's balanced, it's not giving them a huge spike. Your body is digesting it. Again, around noon you feel hungry, so you have lunch. Maybe 4 o'clock you have some sort of snack, and then you have your dinner at night, and then perhaps an evening snack, right? I will tell you that oftentimes what I see is the flat line in the morning, throughout noon, maybe a large spike around the snack time, and then a larger spike around dinner, and then more larger spikes that can happen later on in the evening. And what this is doing is creating chaotic blood sugar patterns based on chaotic eating patterns. It also is disruptive with our circadian rhythms, where we want to feel more nourished during our waking hours and more restful during our sleeping hours. But if we're skipping meals and pushing back lunch until 3 o'clock, it's likely that we're going to play catch up later on in the day, so having bigger dinners, having more snacks, and then most of us have more sedentary lifestyles later in the day. When we're sitting and we're relaxing with the family, reading a book, watching TV, and then to eat the majority of our foods then does not exactly work well with our metabolism when we're least active, as opposed to having breakfast, having lunch, stabilizing your blood sugars, and also utilizing this energy when you're a little bit more active during the day, let's say on campus or at work. So number one, we want to try to avoid going longer than 3 to 4 hours without a meal. We want to start the day with breakfast. And when we have things like breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks, we want to make sure that carbohydrates and protein are present at every snack and meal, and adding things like fibers and fats, especially to meals, also to snacks, because that helps us stabilize our blood sugar level. Having some kind of a fruit or a vegetable. In general, I encourage my clients to get a total of 5 different fruits and vegetables a day. And if we look at this kind of meal plan, looking at blood sugars, we have 5 eating opportunities, right? 3 meals and 2 snacks. If you sneak in a fruit or a vegetable there, it's giving you fiber, your body is thanking you for that, and it's help regulating your blood sugar. If you're somebody who doesn't like to eat large meals, you can certainly avoid eating large meals, but then what you would want to do is have smaller, more frequent meals with that carb and protein ratio every 2 hours, perhaps every 3 hours, as opposed to every 4 hours. So to maintain those blood sugar levels. Skipping meals oftentimes leads us to making fast choices that are most convenient, and those most convenient choices lead us to consuming more refined grains, more dried through McDonald's, Chick-fil-A, higher fat foods that don't necessarily benefit our overall health. So we definitely want to keep our blood sugar levels regulated because it keeps our hunger and our fullness regulated. And when we're a little bit more nourished, our nervous system is happy and we're able to make better choices as opposed to that hangry, I'll eat anything in front of me, what's the quickest, fastest thing, and then the discomfort that comes with after that. So these next couple of slides look at how you can pair some of these foods together, right? So breakfast, we have our carbohydrate that you're welcome to kind of mix and match, right? You can have something like oatmeal with a couple eggs on the side, you put peanut butter in there and have sliced bananas, right? You could do something like a Greek yogurt with granola, and then you have your berries and nuts and seeds in there. Cereal oftentimes gets a bad rap, but I think certain breakfast cereals, the higher fiber, the lower the added sugar. So like an all-bran cereal or a Kashi cereal tends to have a good complex carbohydrate. Milk, soy milk or regular dairy milk, if people can tolerate that, tends to have the best nutrient profile, is going to be a good source of a little bit of fat and a little bit of protein. And then you can always slice things like bananas or berries and then have, let's say, walnuts or peanuts that you can throw into your cold cereal or hot cereal if you're doing oatmeal, and have a little bit more of a balance, right? So that quick, easy meal that most of us like to have, and it's really easy to keep those foods at the office, at our desk. Instead of that quick release, we can see more of a longer lasting meal by doctoring it up a little bit. So this is a great slide to take a screenshot or a photo of to keep for reference. And then same thing for lunch and dinner, right? Whether it's brown rice or white pasta, being able to add an obvious lean source of protein like ground turkey or chicken, having some kind of oils, avocados, and then vegetables along with that meal can really give us a nice balance. So let's say a turkey burger on a whole wheat bun with a little bit of cheese and a side salad. Let's say you have some rice and you want to mimic Chipotle, you add chicken or beans or tofu, all the veggies and sour cream, cheese, salsa, avocado that you like. Most cuisines, whether it's Mexican food or Chinese food or Thai food, you'll find this balance exists, right? Pad Thai has your rice noodles, there's egg in there, chicken can be added, vegetables, your sauce, pasta dishes that have vegetables, pasta primavera with a garlic oil sauce that you can add chicken to. Most cuisines will follow a balanced plate just naturally, right? And then snacks. So this is a great slide to take a screenshot of as well. What I typically like to say is if you're looking for a meal that will last you, or snack, excuse me, 1 hour, one food group is a good choice, right? So maybe just a banana or just an orange or an apple will give you about an hour's worth of energy. If you're, let's say you're getting off of work at 4:30 and dinner with a friend is not until 6:30, but you're already hungry at 4:30, pairing 2 different food groups such as whole grain crackers and cheese or sliced apples and peanut butter might give you a little bit of glucose and energy for 2 hours without feeling too full that 6:30 rolls around and you're no longer interested in a meal with your friend, right? If it's longer or if your metabolism is more active, such as those of you who are active, maybe athletes, 3 different food groups like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, right? Whole wheat bread, peanut butter, jelly, something like an adult Lunchable, cheese, crackers, hummus, veggies, that can give you a little bit more, like 3 hours worth of energy that might hold you over in between classes, for example. So 1 hour, 1 food group, 2 food groups, 2 hours, 3 food groups, 3 hours is a general rule to think about planning your snacks. And that is the best thing to do. I find that when we prepare our meals and think about what am I going to bring for breakfast, what are my options for lunch, what's the plan for dinner, we're more likely to stick to what we have planned, what foods we have at home, as opposed to getting something from the drive-through or skipping a meal altogether. But I recognize that sometimes the week is busy, or we failed to plan ahead, and so many of our restaurants on campus can also lend themselves to a balanced plate, right? So visiting Los Molinos for a Mexican dish, if you have a taco plate, oftentimes that's corn or wheat tortillas, where you can decide to put chicken or steak in there, and then you can have some kind of vegetables that go in there as well, and rice and beans on the side. It could be a little higher of a meal, just because a carbohydrate meal with rice and beans and tortillas, but being able to use your hunger cues to kind of figure out what feels best for me. Subway, getting the whole wheat sandwich, loading it up with veggies, choosing a lean protein like turkey or chicken, poke bowls that you can have white or brown rice, add some kind of lean protein, have veggies in there, seaweed salad, and supplementing meals, right? If you know you're going to grab, let's say, a food truck item, but you have carrots or an apple at your office or in your backpack, you can always add fiber, you can always add fruits and vegetables to a grab and go meal. So that's also something to consider, right? And then exercise. So exercise, in the same way that insulin gets released from the pancreas to lower blood sugar levels, and medications such as metformin can lower blood sugar levels, exercise does the same thing through a different pathway. So those of you who are more cardio based and enjoy jogging or a spin class versus weight training, all of these exercises help to open up those receptors and lower our blood sugar levels after we have eaten a meal, or if we have consistent routine habits, those effects last us for 24 hours, right? So the more physically active we can be to meet these heart healthy guidelines of 150 minutes of moderate physical activity, so something that increases your heart rate, perhaps 30 minutes 5 days a week, is naturally going to put you in a better place for insulin sensitivity, lower blood sugar levels. However, if you feel like you don't have much time, or you're busy, your schedule is so stacked and busy, I don't want you to feel like a 30-minute workout is impossible to get in one period of time. There's a lot of research to show that people who sit at desks for most of their day, if they get up every 1 to 2 hours and take a 5-minute walk around the office or go up and down the stairs, that can improve blood sugar levels and lower them. So a walk after lunch, let's say with a colleague, if your lunch is an hour, you take 45 minutes to eat, 10 minutes to walk, return to your office, to your job, that is certainly beneficial. Or walking the dog after dinner, all of these things are beneficial. It doesn't have to necessarily be sweat producing. As long as you're moving, that is what we're looking for. And for people on campus who do want to do a little bit more intentional, moderate to vigorous activity, we have the MSU Rec Center, which allows students and staff to pay a fee for the semester to utilize not only their gym but their group fitness classes. CU Denver students and staff also have a campus recreation program, and then Healthy Pursuits is a campus-wide for CCD, CU, and MSU students, yoga, Zumba, and Pilates classes that are completely free, no barriers, no membership required, and those are wonderful to be able to utilize what you have on campus already. And then stress. We know that stress can play a role in our blood sugars and in our overall health. The physical impact of a stressor on our bodies can certainly increase cortisol and increase our blood sugar levels. The emotional impact of stress, once upon a time when we had stress, it was functional. That blood sugar got released, cortisol got released, it stimulated glucose to be released into the bloodstream from storage forms, and that allowed us the energy to run away from a dangerous event. But nowadays, things like work or sitting in traffic is not necessarily something we need glucose for, and so that biological impact of increasing blood sugar levels because of stress that can cause high blood sugar levels. So we definitely want to be mindful of tension that we're holding in our jaws or in our shoulders, or if we're feeling very irritable, signs of depression, that perhaps stress is at an all-time high, and what kind of coping strategies can we work with, whether that is physical activity, walking, speaking with a friend, visiting the counseling center for more professional advice. How can we cope with some of the stressors that we have in life, and regulate our nervous system, right? So the fight or flight, that's our sympathetic nervous system that tends to be more activated in times of anxiety or stress. That blood flow goes more towards the muscle systems, the heart, the lungs, to flee a stressful event, so blood sugar levels are raised. Whereas your parasympathetic nervous system, that's a rest and digest, dim lights, reading a book, post-meal relaxation. Blood flow is more so to the gut, able to digest, bringing down our blood sugar levels and keeping a nice calm state. So a lot of breath work, a lot of walking, a lot of working with a professional around coping strategies is really important in blood sugar levels too. And I've worked with a lot of people who have drastically improved their diet, they've improved fitness and activity, but stress because of work or life remains high, and that frustrates them when they're taking their blood sugar readings. So it's really important to consider as well. And then sleep hygiene. We know that our circadian rhythms are what helps us get awake in the morning and sleep best at night. We know that people who have struggles with sleep deprivation can experience things like higher blood pressure, abnormal heart rhythm, sometimes metabolic derangements, and increased risk for higher blood sugar and things like diabetes. It also dysregulates our hormonal system, so hunger and fullness cues can be off. Sometimes we might grab for food to seek energy when what we really need is rest. So sleep hygiene on top of stress management, exercise, and nutrition is also another opportunity to consider one factor of blood sugar management. And that's what we encourage you to do. So whether it's sleep that you want to focus on, if it's balancing your carbohydrates, choosing more complex carbohydrates, we're avoiding skipping meals or staying in motion, I really encourage you to just take one key takeaway from this presentation and give yourself 2 to 3 weeks to focus on one task at hand, right? The more we're able to zone in, get really consistent and specific with our goals, the more likely they will be to be sustainable. If we feel like we radically need to change everything, we might be successful for a short period of time, but what we're really looking for is lifestyle change to make sure that you have a happy and healthy body. So think about that. What small sustainable changes can you choose to make to better your blood sugar levels? And again, my name is Natalie Novak. I'm the registered dietitian at the Health Center at Auraria. Here's my email address if you wanted to reach out to me. The phone number here will allow you to call the front desk and make an appointment to see me as the registered dietitian. I'm happy to provide more individualized education and accountability around your goals. Thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to the next Lunch and Learn or to see you in session.